Hi, and welcome to Sovereign Sisters Podcast. And if you were on the live, you will know that it completely flaked out. For some reason, everything went down. I'm not able to get back into Rumble. I couldn't get YouTube's restarted, and my software closed me out. So here we are, and I'm going to try it. I'll just record it locally and I'll post it later. So sorry to those who wanted to watch it live, but we can still have a conversation in the comments, and you're welcome at any time to reach out to me by my email, sovereignsisterspodcast@proton.me. So let's talk about homeschooling tonight. It's actually quite funny because technology is used for homeschooling in much of the time too. So I hope that's not an issue for all those homeschoolers, but we're going to talk about the myths, the facts, and the road to success in homeschooling. So we know that homeschooling is an ever growing in popularity. It's reshaping how we think about education, but it's also surrounded with a lot of myths and questions. So whether you're a parent or just somebody considering homeschooling or just interested in education, I'm going to provide some of the myths and the facts that you need to know. We're going to explore how homeschooling works, compare it to traditional schooling, and talk about the socialization, the academic outcomes, and even give you some practical steps to start homeschooling. So here's a little teaser for you. Did you know that homeschoolers are often outperform public school students in academics? Or that homeschooling is not just school at home? So stick around, going to uncover the truth behind the headlines. So what is homeschooling and why do families choose it? Well, homeschooling at its core is education led by parents or guardians outside the traditional school system. It's tailored to a child's specific needs and can happen anywhere, not just at home. In its broadest terms, it's an educational approach where children are primarily taught by parents or tutors outside the traditional public or private school. This form of education is typically characterized by the customization of the learning methods, its curricula, and the pace to meet the individual needs, interests, and values of the children and their families. Now, homeschooling can take many forms, ranging from a structured curriculum-based system that mirrors traditional schooling to something much more flexible, a student-led approach such as something called unschooling or even experiential learning. It can involve the use of online platforms, community resources, or group learning opportunities to supplement home instruction. But the overarching goal of homeschooling is to provide that personalized and adaptable education that aligns with the family's educational philosophy and the child's unique needs. So why do families homeschool? Well, it's to provide the tailored education, that customized learning that fits your child's unique pace, his or her strengths and interests. It also helps create a safe, supported learning environment, typically free of bullying or other safety concerns. It also is available to incorporate religious beliefs or philosophical values into the curriculum. And it provides focused attention that's hard to get in a classroom, especially for the special needs or gifted learners. There's a lot of flexibility and diversity in homeschooling, and homeschoolers come from all backgrounds. They're urban, rural, religious, secular, but the common thread is the desire for more personalized education. The current public school education system faces numerous challenges that can affect student outcomes and overall educational quality. While many of schools and educators strive to provide excellent education, there are systemic issues that create pitfalls that hinder that progress. There are many reasons why parents choose homeschooling over traditional public schooling. While schools have played a critical role in society in the past, there are systemic challenges that limit their ability to serve all students effectively. And there are many issues that need to be addressed that require a multi-pronged approach. So public schools often offer standardized curriculum where it's a one-size-fits-all approach, which doesn't cater to the diverse learning styles or paces of many children. And there is an overemphasis on testing. These high-stakes standardized testing can limit creativity and critical thinking in classrooms that require students not to think for themselves, but to regurgitate data in the form that it was instructed, which means teachers may begin to teach to the test. They prioritize rote memorization over deep understanding. This doesn't allow for critical thinking. And that often neglects the gifted or struggling student. Gifted students may not be challenged enough, while students with learning disabilities or those who need extra support may be left behind. And on top of that, there are disparities in funding. Schools that are in affluent areas may receive more resources due to the local property taxes, while schools in low-income areas face chronic underfunding. Many public schools operate in aging buildings with outdated infrastructure and insufficient access to technology or modern learning tools. And I challenge you to take a look at school buildings and compare them to how prisons are built. At least in my area, there is a distinct similarity between them. The lack of funding and the impact that it has, it creates shortages in teachers. It creates larger class sizes, which create teacher burnout, and it's difficult to retain qualified educators. And without quality educators, you don't have quality education. Overcrowding can have a huge impact on learning. Overcrowded classrooms reduce the teacher-to-student ratio, making it harder for teachers to manage the classroom effectively. There can be 20 to 30 students in one classroom and maybe more these days. Even with a teaching assistant, this isn't enough to provide one-on-one help with a student that is struggling. Larger classes increase workloads, increases the stress on teacher. That leads to higher burnout rate and the turnover among teachers. Not to mention that the lack of support from administrators who focus on the budget and maintaining the status quo. So there are many inequities in educational opportunities, and that includes students in marginalized communities that have less access to advanced placement, AP, that's the AP classes, or extracurricular activities, and quality educators. And we know there's a digital divide. Not all students have access to reliable internet or devices. And this was an issue highlighted during the pandemic when the shift went to online learning. So traditional curriculum may be outdated and inflexible and may not adequately prepare students for modern careers in STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, and math, let alone STEAM, which includes the arts. And so they're lacking in the ability to get into the technology fields or even the creative industries. There is an emphasis on memorization over critical thinking, problem solving, or practical skills. This is the major pitfall of the current curriculum. Memorizing doesn't allow the student to think outside the box, to develop their own ways of solving problems and developing their own ways of viewing the world. And there's a slow adaptation to change in public education system. They often struggle to update curricula to match the technology and the societal advancements. Textbooks may be outdated. They may be a decade behind in the information they provide. How does this benefit learning? The overemphasis on standardized testing prioritizes test scores over learning and can lead to a narrow focus on testable subjects like math and reading. This neglects the arts, physical education, and the emotional learning, which causes negative effects on learning. And why is this? Because schools receive financial benefits or incentives tied to their students' performance on standardized testing. Of course, this varies depending on the state and the specific educational policies in place, but here's how it typically works. There are federal and state funding incentives. Locally, they'll have performance-based funding. So some states or school districts allocate additional funding to schools based on their student performance on standardized tests. This is often part of an accountability system aimed at improving academic outcomes, which doesn't. But schools that perform well on these tests may receive bonuses or grants to invest in further improvements. Then there's the federal Title I program, where schools serving a higher percentage of low-income students receive funding. Performance on standardized tests influences how these funds are distributed and whether a school qualifies for additional support. Some states also have created these reward programs that provide financial incentives to schools with high standardized test scores or a significant year-over-year performance in them. For example, a school may receive a grant for technology or teacher bonuses or special programs if that standardized test scores meet or exceeds whatever set benchmarks they have. So how does this accountability system work? Well, schools with those higher test scores may be ranked more favorably in the state's accountability systems. Higher rankings can attract more students, which increases enrollment-based funding in districts where funding is tied to student attendance numbers. On the other hand, schools with poor performance may face sanctions, including funding cuts, state interventions, and even closure in extreme cases. Are you seeing the reasoning behind teaching to the test? In some districts, teachers and school administrators may receive financial bonuses if their students achieve high standardized test scores or show significant improvement. These incentives are also often designed to motivate educators to focus on measurable outcomes, which goes back to having teachers teach to the test in order to meet these outcomes because they're solely based on standardized tests. So in addition to the financial incentives, high-performing schools may also qualify for grants or prestigious recognition awards like the National Blue Ribbon Schools program in the U.S., which can then lead to additional funding opportunities and resources. There are other indirect financial benefits, including high test scores can improve the school's reputation, attract more students in an area where funding is tied to enrollment. This increases enrollment and can lead to increased financial resources. See, it's a circular thinking here. But better test scores may encourage greater financial contribution from the local communities, things like the parent-teacher associations or even private donors. So this leads to the notion that the school must be providing a good education while all they're doing is having students achieve their goal of higher test scores on a standardized test, which may or may not actually be teaching the students anything of value. So there is a lot of criticism tied to this funding for testing because it causes this unintended consequence. I argue that tying funding to standardized testing that leads to teaching to the tests and a narrow focus on testable subjects like math and reading often take the expense of losing out on the arts, physical education, and especially critical thinking. This creates unfairness for schools in low-income areas that may struggle to achieve high test scores due to fewer resources, especially qualified teachers, which creates this cycle where they lose out on additional funding. And to top it off, the testing pressures can cause significant stress for students and educators alike. This isn't education, it's just rote memorization. There are challenges for the teachers too, including low pay and lack of benefits. Many teachers are underpaid relative to their qualification and workload, and that leads to dissatisfaction and attrition. While this is true, it is the system that needs to make the changes necessary to provide better opportunities in the classroom. Strict regulation and administrative demands limit teachers' creativity and ability to adapt lessons to the students' needs, causing them to feel a lack of autonomy in the classroom. They have heavy workloads, large class sizes, and these administrative pressures, which all contribute to teacher burnout, high turnover rates. This leaves students with less than adequate teachers. Now, many schools struggle to effectively address social and emotional issues such as bullying, which can have long-term impacts on students' well-being. With the increasing rates of anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues among students, it's often unmet due to the lack of resources or the lack of counselors. And having things like a rigid zero tolerance disciplinary policies can disproportionately affect marginalized students and may fail to address the root cause of their behavior issues. Due to a skills gap, many public schools inadequately prepare students for a future with a focus on academic theory rather than practical skills like financial literacy, critical thinking. Critical thinking keeps coming up because that's really what you want out of education, but you also want technical expertise. The school system often prioritizes college preparation, neglecting students who would benefit from vocational or technical training. Now, there are many administrative and bureaucratic inefficiencies. At the top of the chain, many schools suffer from ineffective leadership, mismanagement, or just a lack of visionary direction. The bureaucratic hurdles and layers of administration slows decision making and makes it difficult to implement innovative solutions. And there are external pressures on school that includes interference in educational policies, and they're often influenced by a political agenda rather than evidence-based practices. Schools are expected to address societal problems such as poverty and inequality without adequate resources or economic constraints to do so effectively. But isn't that what our government representatives are supposed to address, not the school system? Many schools do not prioritize teaching skills such as financial literacy, communication, collaboration, emotional intelligence, conflict resolution. These are all critical skills that are needed. Plus, we see how the pandemic exposed and worsened existing weaknesses with the widened achievement gaps due to inconsistent access to remote learning and increased mental health challenges both among students and staff. Overall, many schools are resistant to adopting modern teaching methods or embracing technology, which limits progress. This may be partially due to funding constraints, but it could be lack of visionary leadership, which may emphasize tradition over innovation. But it basically boils down to inertia in the system. It's large bureaucratic systems which are slow to implement changes, even when they're needed, mainly due to financial resources and, again, lack of vision. So let's answer the question I posed at the beginning. Do homeschoolers outperform public school students in academics? Yes. Homeschoolers often score 15 to 30% higher on standardized tests than public school students. And these are students that are not being taught to the test. Studies have shown structured homeschoolers excel in literacy and math. Two such studies are by Ray in 2017 and Martin Chang et al. In 2011. Please go look them up for yourself so you can get a more extensive view of it. Homeschoolers seem to be much more prepared for college, often earning higher GPAs than their public school peers. So there's a myth that homeschoolers lack social skills. In reality, homeschool children socialize through co-ops, sports, volunteering, and extracurricular activities. And in a 2013 study in the Peabody Journal of Education, they found that homeschoolers often develop strong interpersonal skills through their diversity of interactions. And homeschoolers often find they have a more supportive environment, which reduces their stress and anxiety, and so it's beneficial to the children. During the pandemic, many families found that homeschooling improved emotional well-being, especially during a time of uncertainty for many children, which it was for a great deal of them. Homeschoolers are frequently admitted to colleges and universities, and they perform well academically once there, and they go on to have well-established careers. And homeschoolers often excel in self-motivation and problem-solving, skills that serve them well in the workforce. They demonstrate more independence and adaptability skills. So let's now step back and take a look at the various forms of homeschooling approaches, and let's highlight some of their unique aspects and methods. There is the structured homeschooling, which basically mirrors traditional schooling with textbooks and schedules. They follow a pre-designed curriculum, and they often purchase it from educational publishers. The subjects are taught in a systematic and sequential manner, often using textbooks, workbooks, and other formal educational materials. Parents may set specific schedules, lesson plans, and goals similar to those in conventional schools, and they provide grading and assessment that are often employed to track progress. So this provides the benefit of a clear structure, and it makes it easy for parents and students to stay on track. It also prepares students for those standardized tests, because many states also require them of homeschoolers in addition to the public schoolers. And it helps them transition to traditional schooling or higher education. And this may be more suitable for parents who prefer a more guided approach with minimal customization. But there are realities in this method. It can feel very rigid and less flexible compared to other methods. And it may not fully cater to the child's unique learning pace or interest. So let's try another one. There's the classical education. Now this one's a little more in tune again with the traditional public school. It follows what is called the trivium model of grammar, logic, and rhetoric states. This method emphasizes critical thinking and strong foundation in traditional subjects. The trivium model is a foundational framework in classical education that emphasizes a three-stage approach to learning, aligning with the natural development stages of a child's intellectual growth. This is derived from an ancient Greek and Roman educational practices, and the trivium focuses on developing critical thinking and communication skills through structured progression. So those three phases are the grammar stage, which is roughly ages 5 to 11, which we think of as elementary school. They focus on laying the foundation for the knowledge. Then they emphasize the memorization of facts and foundational knowledge in subjects like language, math, science, and history. Now, children are naturally adept at memorizing at this age, so the stage leverages that ability. Subjects are taught through songs or chants or rhymes and repetition to help retain that information. The goal of which is to build that strong base of knowledge that students can draw upon in later stages. So things like this are, they learn their grammar rules or mathematical operations or scientific terms or historical timelines, and they may be applied in those different methods such as singing, which we know children retain all the way through as an adult. Now, the next stage is called the logic stage, and that's from ages 12 to 14, which we consider roughly middle school. The focus is on developing reasoning and analytical skills. Now, this encourages students to analyze, question, and understand relationships between pieces of information. It introduces formal logic, also debate and critical thinking exercises. They focus on the why behind the facts learned in the grammar stage. And the goal here is to teach the student to reason, to make the connection, and evaluate the arguments logically. Now, this is very helpful for cause and effect when you're studying things like the relationships in history or solving complex problems in math or constructing arguments in essays. Then the students move on to the rhetoric stage, and this is usually ages 14 to 18, which we consider roughly high school. So they focus on refining that communication and expression. They teach the student to articulate their thoughts effectively through written and oral communication. Now, this builds on that knowledge from the grammar stage and the analytical stage from the logic stage. So this encourages original thought, persuasive argumentation and creative expression. The goal here is to develop the ability to synthesize knowledge and present it clearly and convincingly. And they do this by writing essays, giving speech, engaging in debates, and creating persuasive projects. Now, there are challenges to this model. It's very rigorous. It requires a significant time commitment from both the students and the educators. It has a classical focus, which emphasizes classical texts from Latin and forward, and traditional methods may not appeal to all learners or align with contemporary educational trends. There is a lot of parent-teacher involvement, whether it's parent or tutor that's teaching, but it requires a lot of involvement for them because both the homeschoolers and the educators must have a deep understanding of the model to implement it effectively. Many classical education programs, such as Classical Conversations and the curriculum based on The Well-Trained Mind by Susan Weiss Bauer, adapt the trivium model for contemporary homeschooling or private schooling. They integrate modern subjects like technology while preserving the core principles of the trivium. The trivium model remains a respected framework for fostering intellectual growth, critical thinking, and eloquence, making it a cornerstone of classical education. So let's turn the corner and look at unschooling, which is completely different. It is student-led, interest-based learning with no formal curriculum. It's learner-directed, and the approach is to emphasize the self-motivation and natural curiosity rather than a structured curriculum. It features no formal lesson plan or schedules. The children pursue their interests and passions with parents acting as facilitator or guides. And the learning is integrated into everyday life through exploration, play, projects, and real-world experiences. This focuses on autonomy and intrinsic motivation. So the benefits are that they encourage deep, meaningful learning tailored to the child's interest. It builds life skills, independence, and creativity. And it can be less stressful for children who thrive in a non-structured environment. But there are challenges, and the reality of it is there may be a lack of consistency or adequate preparation for standardized testing if that is required by your state. And this requires a significant amount of trust in the child's ability to self-direct. So here's another option with several options. There's the Montessori, the Charlotte Mason, and the eclectic models. These represent more flexible approaches, and they combine elements from various education philosophies and curricula. So let's look at the Montessori homeschooling. First, it's inspired by the Montessori philosophy. This method is focused on self-directed learning in a prepared environment. It emphasizes hands-on experiential learning with materials designed to encourage discovery. It's child-led pace, but with a structured framework of developmental goals. The focus is on independence, practical life skills, and respect for the child's natural growth. Now, this encourages self-motivation, independence, and a lot of creativity. And it aligns with the developmental stages of the child. Now, this is more well-suited for a younger child who enjoy more tactile learning. But this can also have challenges where it requires specialized materials that can often be costly. And parents need to understand the Montessori principles in order to implement this effectively. Another method is called the Charlotte Mason method. This philosophy emphasizes short, focused lessons that use living books rather than dry textbooks. It incorporates nature studies, art, music, and narration alongside traditional subjects. There's a heavy reliance on high-quality literature and storytelling, and the lessons are intentionally kept short to maximize focus and attention. Now, this creates a nurture for love of learning and appreciation of beauty and creativity, but it also allows for a balanced approach to academics and personal growth, and it encourages outdoor and experiential learning. But it does require significant time for reading and planning, and it may not appeal to families who prefer a more technology-driven method. Now, one of these other methods is called an eclectic homeschooling. It's another flexible approach that combines various educational philosophies and curricula. Parents can mix and match resources from different curricula and create their own materials. The learning styles and interests of the child is what heavily influences this approach. It incorporates the blend of textbooks, online courses, experiential learning, and community resources. Now, this is highly adaptable to the child's learning needs and the family's schedule, and it allows families to explore diverse subjects and teaching styles together. This fosters creativity and critical thinking by exposing children to varied perspectives. But the challenges are that this requires more planning and effort for parents to create cohesive lessons, and it also may lack the consistency of structured homeschooling. Now, another method is project-based homeschooling. This approach involves learning through long-term student-chosen projects. This may be an advantage for the older student or one that has a specific skill set or defined interest. Some of its key features are that it focuses on deep interdisciplinary explorations of a topic that the child is passionate about. It helps them combine research, experimentation, and again, creative expression. This encourages collaboration with their family, peers, and community resources, which promotes critical thinking, problem solving, and real-world application. It is highly engaging for students who enjoy hands-on activities. It also develops project management skills and self-discipline. But again, the challenges are there. It requires parental guidance to maintain focus and ensure there's educational value. And it also may lack balance if projects overshadow core academic subjects. Now, the next one is online homeschooling, and this is a method of using digital platforms as the primary mode of education. And this is probably the type of homeschooling most people are familiar with today's remote learning environment. Here, students access online courses, virtual classes, or full online school programs. That may include interactive sessions, video tutorials, and live teacher support. But they can both be synchronous, meaning real-time classes, or asynchronous, which is self-paced. This provides access to expert instruction and a wide range of subjects. It's flexible for families who travel or require specific scheduling needs. And often it includes built-in assessments and project tracking. There are challenges because it's heavily reliant on technologies, which is a barrier for some families. And it's less hands-on involvement for the parent, which may not be suitable for all homeschooling philosophies. But here's one that I think if I had children at home that I'd be more likely to look into as a homeschooling option. It's the Family Homeschool Co-op. A homeschool co-op is a group of homeschooling families that collaborate to provide educational and extracurricular activities and opportunities for their children. Co-ops can vary widely in structure and size and purpose, but their primary goal is to enhance the homeschooling experience through shared effort. A homeschool co-op is a group of families that share teaching responsibilities. For example, one parent might teach science while another leads an art class. And co-ops can provide social interaction and access to other expertise. There are different types of co-ops they don't just have to be academic, they can be enrichment or even faith-based. So some of the benefits of these co-ops are that they share the teaching responsibility and that lightens the load for parents. There are group learning opportunities to create social bond and expands children's perspectives. And co-ops can be highly flexible, they're catering to various needs and goals. So here are some of the different types of homeschooling co-ops. There's the academic co-ops, which focus on teaching core academic subjects such as math, science, history, and writing. They often include structured classes led by parents or hired teachers. An example might be a parent who has expertise in science may teach biology while another teaches literature. Then there are specialized co-ops. They concentrate on specific things, areas like STEM or the arts or foreign languages. There could be a music-focused co-op that includes group lessons and performances. Then there are enrichment co-ops. These offer supplementary activities like art, physical education, and hands-on science experiments. And they focus on more creative, interactive learning rather than on just core academics. There are faith-based co-ops which incorporate religious teaching and values alongside of academic subjects. And they often serve families with shared faith or religious practices. There are social or even play co-ops that emphasize socialization and play-based learnings for younger children. They include field trips and group games and casual meetups. Or you can design a co-op that incorporates any or all of these types of activities that suit the needs of the family involved. So by sharing teaching responsibilities, the burden of an individual parent is reduced by dividing those teaching duties among the members. This allows parents to focus on subjects they're passionate about or skilled in. Parents with specialized knowledge or backgrounds, whether it's music, math, engineering, whatever, can bring that experience and expertise to the group. And some co-ops do hire professionals for advanced subjects. This provides children with regular opportunities to interact with their peers in a structured environment that is overseen by the people who care for them. It encourages teamwork, group projects, and cooperative learning. And it exposes the children to various teaching styles and perspectives. You have a mix of teaching methods by the different people who are teaching. It offers subjects and activities that may be challenging to teach at home, such as lab-based science experiments or team sports, but someone else may have that experience and be able to offer it in one of the co-ops. It does provide support for parents because it builds a sense of community amongst the homeschooling family and offers a support network for sharing resources, advice, and encouragement. And mostly it's cost effective because families share expenses for materials, the venues used, and the instructors. And this reduces the individual financial burden. There are challenges for homeschooling co-ops, but they're not insurmountable ones, such as time commitment. It does require regular attendance or participation. Parents may need to teach, organize, or assist with classes. And shouldn't parents be involved with their children's education? But it's not all just you. You have that community. And so there is a coordination that needs to be there. You need to schedule and manage a co-op. It can be complex, especially for larger groups, so you might want to start small. And before you start a co-op, you have to make decisions about what curriculum do you want to offer, what teaching methods, what kind of class schedules, and when you're working with other people, it's going to require negotiation and compromise of all those involved. There may be a lack of consistency, but you have to depend on your volunteers and you have to know what the quality is, and that quality can vary. You have to have an agreement for a length of the participation of those that are going to be members of the co-op, because if families leave the co-op, that can disrupt whatever you've already got planned for activities or classes. And while co-ops are generally economical, fees for hired instructor, venues, or supplies may add up, but this cost can be minimized for each family because of the cost sharing. So how do you start your own homeschool co-op? Start by identifying families in your homeschooling community who want to share or have similar educational goals or values. You have to define the co-op's purpose. Decide, is this going to be an academic, enrichment, social, faith-based, or a combination? You have to know those goals in advance so you know what the co-op should achieve. And you have to plan for the logistics. You have to choose a meeting location, whether it's in the individual homes of the members, if you find a community center or a library or even a church. Then determine the frequency, how often you're going to meet. And then to develop the schedule for classes and activities. And because it's a group of you, you need to make a decision and stick to it, what parents will teach what and who's going to assist with subjects or tasks. Then there are also people who have to do the administrative roles, such as coordinating schedules, the communication, and handling the finance. You have to set up rules and guidelines to create these agreements about attendance, participation, behavior, and responsibilities. And of course, you have to decide how decisions are going to be made. Are you going to vote on it? Is it just going to be a consensus? You have to talk about these things and be open and transparent. So you have to select the subjects for the curriculum or the topics or activities that you want based on the interests and needs of the whole group. You have to allow for flexibility for parents to contribute their own unique skills. Then, of course, you have to be realistic. There's budget and funding to talk about. You have to calculate the cost for your materials, if you have a space rental or if you hire instructors. Determine where you're going to hold your classes, if it's in members' home, which is less costly, or if it's in a rented space. How many hired instructors are necessary, and then you'll adjust your cost accordingly. And just like with any co-op, you'll have to establish membership fees or shared contributions. This is where it requires trust and transparencies. So here are some examples of activities in co-ops, and you can, again, try one of them, several of them, or all of them to combine into an overall curriculum. You have academic classes with math, writing, workshops, science labs, whatever. Then you may have creative arts, painting, music, or drama. Then you might have someone that does group project, history fairs, STEM challenges, or science experiments. Of course, something important is physical education, such as sports, yoga, outdoor activities, field trips, museums, historical sites, nature reserves. It's endless, whatever you can think of. But also remember, kids should be involved in things like public speaking, debate teams, or speech practice. These are skills that kids need to learn so they can use them and not have that fear as they get older. So how can you find homeschooling co-ops? Well, there are plenty of local resources. Check out your library, your churches, your faith centers, community centers. They often host or advertise co-ops. Of course, there are online platforms like websites like meetup.com, and Facebook groups connect homeschooling families with local co-ops. And there are state and regional homeschooling associations that maintain a directory of co-ops. Homeschooling co-ops provide a balanced approach to homeschooling. They blend personalized education with the benefits of group learning and shared experience. Families can adapt the structure and activities to meet their needs, making co-ops a valuable resource in the homeschooling journey. Numerous studies have compared traditional public school educated children with homeschool educated children, focusing on various aspects such as academic achievement, socialization, mental health, and long-term outcomes. And they are comparable, if not better. So some practical steps before you start homeschooling. You need to understand your state laws. Homeschooling is legal in all 50 states, but the requirements may vary. Research your state's law because some require notice of intent, record keeping, and standardized testing. And before you begin, define those educational goals. Ask yourself, what do you want to achieve with homeschooling? Is it academic excellence, flexibility, specific values? Whatever it is, write it down, make it real. Then choose a homeschooling style. Match your goals with a homeschooling approach, whether structured, eclectic, or project-based, whatever it is, that's going to meet those goals that you decide upon. Then select a curriculum. You have options like online programs like Time for Learning. There are faith-based curricula like Abaca, or free resources like Khan Academy. Then create a schedule. Decide on a routine. Will you follow a traditional school calendar or you'll go all year round? And I think it's important to join a homeschooling community. Local co-ops, Facebook groups, or state associations can provide you with those support and resources. Then set up your learning space. Create a space conducive to focusing and learning. This can be a dedicated room or just the kitchen table. And start small and then adjust. Begin with a few subjects and build from there. Be flexible and adapt to what works for your family or the group of families that you're joining with. Homeschooling does offer unique opportunity. It's not just about academics. It's about fostering independence, creativity, and a lifelong love of learning. This is one of the basics of sovereignty, independent critical thinking. Homeschooling is adaptable, making it a viable option for many families. Rather than settling for an indoctrination into the societal norms of today, homeschooling offers a safe space where children can learn in a more relaxed and flexible environment. For parents considering homeschooling, you don't have to be perfect. The most important thing is to be engaged and responsive to your child's need. You'll have good days and you'll have challenging days, but there are rewards, like watching your child thrive, and that's so worth it. So if you're interested in homeschooling, start by researching your state's law, connecting with local homeschoolers, and provide me with your thoughts on homeschooling. Leave something in the comments. Sorry we didn't get to discuss it live tonight, but at least we'll have a conversation in the comments, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So I thank you for listening to Sovereign Sisters podcast again. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a comment, share it with others who might be curious about homeschooling. And as always, as I say, I wish everyone a great opportunity in this avenue of homeschooling. And I also want to say everything you do should be done with the thought for your children's best, because that's why we're here, right? As parents, we want the best for our children. So until next time, God bless.